Good morning, Dylan.
Morning, Booster. Good to see you.
Um, Good to see you too. Um, Thanks so much for your flexibility in meeting at this time.
Of course, no problem.
Yeah. So, well, how are you today? How are you in this moment?
I'm good. I'm good. I got the house to myself, so it's nice to have the time to prepare and just kind of be present with it. And
Hmm.
yeah, speaking of presence, I think that's kind of where we left off last time.
That's right. Yeah. And what do you remember about that?
Well, I recall the power of presence that someone can have, the effect that having a powerful presence will have on your interactions and your relationships and how people perceive your level of interest and focus on them and what their deal is.
Yeah, that's true. And what and so what you're describing is the impact it has on others. And
Yeah.
have you noticed any impact that it's having on yourself? Any difference in the quality of being when you're present versus not present?
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, it's funny. The thing that has transpired since the last time we talked was I saw a video on YouTube and it was talking about a book about cleaning. And it was from the perspective of a monk, a Buddhist monk. And basically, these monks will use cleaning as a form of meditation and,
Hmm.
a way to focus their minds and clear their minds on the path to enlightenment. And so this book is about, how to clean your house basically and how the process of doing that you can declutter your mind as well. And so I've been playing around with that, and that's kind of turned into my meditation practice where I just attempt to clear my mind and only focus on what I'm doing and not just have this running dialogue or alternate screen going in my head about other things while I clean. Um, and even though it in a way it feels like I fail at it miserably, like I feel like I can achieve like maybe 3 seconds without a thought. Uh,
Yeah.
I still find it's helping me with kind of a level of intensity and focus throughout the rest of the day, which has been really cool. Actually, I absolutely notice it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Hmm.
yeah, I interpret it mostly as intensity, and that's
Intensity.
something that
Interesting.
I
Yeah.
distinctly remember my dad telling me that he found meditation for him almost made him a little too intense. Like he kind of felt like it intimidated people and just
Yeah.
it could be a little much at times.
Yeah. 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 One I know for me, one of the kind of like telltale signs that I'm not being as present as I'd like to be is if I'm listening to somebody and I'm 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 not really listening. I'm pretending to listen, but what I'm really doing is waiting for my chance to talk. Right? Like I've got it queued up in my brain, and I'm just waiting for the pause so that I can layer it in. And
Yes.
that's then I know that that's kind of like a flag. I'm like, oh yeah, no, I'm not really listening. So then I just try to like capture whatever that thought is as like a mnemonic device, like give it a word or something, put a pin in it, and try to stay, focused. I might even say, hey, I just checked out there for a second. What was it that last thing that you said? And even I noticed that even admitting that I was checked out feels kind of like embarrassing or awkward, but
Yeah.
I've noticed that other people really appreciate that. They
Mm.
appreciate you just kind of like owning that and coming back to the connection. It's like, oh, what you were just saying. I missed that. I was checked out there for a second. What was that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it helps me kind of reconnect. But we were. there were a couple of things since our last session. One was presence. And do you remember what the other piece was that we were going to experiment with?
I don't.
Okay.
Oh, no,
So
I
no
don't.
problem. I'll remind you. We were talking about conflict, kind of navigating conflict with your partner. And the first experiment was what happens if you are, instead of, listening to defend yourself, you're listening for what she cares about. You're actually listening with the intent to understand. And we covered that just simply understanding someone does not mean that you agree with their version, but it does mean that you understand their experience and acknowledge that their experience, while you may disagree with it, that their experience is valid. Meaning like
Right.
you're trusting that they are relating their side as truthfully or as, honestly, as earnestly as, they believe, right? Like they're talking to you in good faith. They're saying, hey, this is what, I see happening. And you may disagree, but by expressing care and understanding, just that can flip the script. It can have them, like, the anger comes down, the conflict comes down because they see you're being receptive. So that was like the first thing when we did that 2 sessions ago. And we came back and you said that actually had, like, it made a difference. There was, you showed up, you expressed, you reflected your understanding. And in the past, when conflicts happened, they didn't really end great. And there was a period of time where you felt like you were kind of walking on eggshells, or just things felt, there was a distance between you. And then when you tried listening to understand, it switched things. And you actually said, I think you said you got laid afterwards, like you felt closer, and it worked pretty well.
Yeah.
But then you asked this really intelligent question, which was, okay, so like, I understand her side, but when do I get to say mine? When do I get to speak my side? Right. And so in our last session, we talked about how to do that. That once you've expressed your understanding and they agree, then there's an opportunity for you to say, hey, I'd like to share my experience here as well. Are you open to hearing that? And then getting a chance to unpack your side. And I'm curious, between now and then, have you had any conflicts? And, if so, anything different? Was there anything different that you were able to try or employ? And I know that we're recording this, and that's great, but I just want to say, like, Dylan, this is your session, and I want you to feel free. Like, we don't have to use any of this footage or anything like that. Like, I want you to feel free to really dive into your experience and make this time valuable for you.
Thank you. The thing that comes to mind, we didn't have any overt conflict since our last session, but over Christmas we did stay with Sumi's parents, and there was plenty of just kind of, we'll say, casual conflict between Sumi and her parents that I get to kind of witness and think about while it's happening. And so I did get to employ the listen for understanding perspective. And well, the way that went was my mother-in-law was anxious and stressing about something that happened with her other daughter that we were all talking about. And it was something that she was really bothering her. And it was bothering her so much that she would talk about it more or less constantly. And my wife was getting tired of it. And so there was conflict between the two of them because Sumi wants her mom to just kind of stop and to not be constantly venting her anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, Sumi's mom was not feeling heard in the slightest. And so she just kept on having the anxiety, and I never really felt like anybody was kind of getting it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, naturally, I was on my wife's side. Like, I agreed, like, gosh, this is not something to keep on, talking about. You don't have control over it. Just let it go, whatever.
Right.
Um, but then I did kind of snap out and I was like, oh, I need to actually listen to understand, and I need to ask her, like, ask her questions, and give her the stage to actually say it all instead of constantly being cut off. And
Amazing.
yeah, so it was
Amazing.
good. So I got to
That's
actually ask her
great.
questions, and she got to say it, and then I got to empathize, and be like, "Oh, that must be so frustrating for you to feel these things, and you don't have any control over the situation, and it must be awful." And and she loved it, and it was great. And then after that, it toned down a little bit, and I I loved the fact that I was able to remember it in time, and because
Amazing. That yeah.
I wasn't personally involved, and so it was easier. I wasn't
Right.
I wasn't in a high stress level or anything like that. I was an outside observer, and so I got to practice it on easy mode, and it worked. So that was cool.
That's fantastic. I think one of the things I'm most lit up about is that you were in the moment and you noticed that communication wasn't actually happening, and that what was needed was her mom, your mother-in-law, needed to feel heard,
Yeah.
and that wasn't happening, and that your wife was getting frustrated with her behavior because it didn't seem like she was listening to your wife, but you could see your mother-in-law didn't feel like she was being listened to either, and so neither one felt heard, but they were both talking.
Yes.
So they're both talking, nobody is being heard, but you as the third, you're able to see what's needed. That's the advantage that being regulated versus dysregulated gives you.
Yes. Yes. Totally. And it's so hard to move from dysregulation to regulation.
Right. When we're under the gun, when that conflict is directed at us, our biology really works against us. That biology is made to sort of like recover from skidding on ice. It's like acute stress. It's designed to get us out of danger. And when that biology comes online, when we're trying to understand or relate to the nuance with another human, it's hard. Our brain it's like a magnet. It just goes to, well, essentially it goes to it seeks psychological safety, right? That flight, fight, freeze, or fawn response kind of hijacks our brain, and we start defending ourselves or wanting to avoid or wanting to placate or just sort of just freeze and resent this person for saying what they're saying. But you, when as the third, you're able to sort of see that, and then you took even the next step, which to me is like one of the biggest gifts of this particular skill set, one I use all the time, is when I'm listening. I made a living off of this as a corporate facilitator. When you're seeing two people locking in like that and you're the third, it's easy to just say, hey, can I ask a question? And you ask the question. It's kind of like you might pause your wife and mother-in-law, and you turn to your mother, may I ask a question? And then you ask the question that they're dying to hear.
Right.
It's like you said, this sounds really frustrating to you. Do you feel like do you feel like completely abandoned, or do you feel like deeply frustrated here? Do you feel like you're understood, like you're deeper? What's your real care here? Do you feel like it's being understood right now? Do you feel understood right now? And it puts the light on the dysfunction that's happening in the conversation, the dynamic right there.
Yes.
Right? She's not feeling understood. So you're applying the same skills that you would apply to your partner, like listening to understand. And then once you have an inkling of that understanding, then you verify it with a question. Don't make the common error mode of saying a declaration, right? Of saying, you just don't feel understood. Versus, do you feel understood? The first one is going to elicit some kind of defense reaction, right? You don't feel understood. I mean, it may work, but it's slightly aggressive. And when they're already in, kind of in a threat response, asking them the question pulls them out of their experience, and they actually have to reflect and answer your question. And so you're already moving them from the threat response back into regulation.
Yeah.
Because you just asked a question they are desperate to answer, and they're going to start to immediately unwind. So it's like the $1 million question that you can ask someone in a situation like that. And when you're the third, it's a lot easier, right? Like, that's why facilitators, I think, whenever we can get a third person in there, particularly somebody who has some training that can do what we're talking about here, that's not going to just sort of like decide who is right and then gang up on the one they think's wrong, right? That's not
Right.
facilitation. But to be able to listen from a place of understanding and then ask clarifying questions from that understanding helps both people. You actually role model to, in this case, your wife. You're role modeling what does listening to understand look like. And then she's going to see that and recognize immediately, yeah, I'm not actually listening to her. I'm not actually understanding. And maybe maybe she'll feel like you one-upped her or something. But at the very least, you're showing up in that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And now I want to ask her if she recalls the moment and see if she, felt anything shift then. I don't know. Just be curious.
Right. Or even just your mother-in-law. Like, I think, once you start to make this a practice, then even casual conversations in the kitchen with your mother-in-law can be way more interesting. Right?
Yes.
You're not talking about whatever, the weather, you can ask questions that are coming from a place of genuine curiosity to understand her experience better. Even if it's something mundane, even if it's like, she's like, yeah, this dang garbage disposal is just, it's always getting clogged. And, I've asked Frank to fix it, a dozen times, and he just blows me off. And be like, well, do you often have to like repair things in the house? Is that something that you've had to learn how to do? Are you, do you consider yourself kind of a handy person, or do you, like it when others, when your husband handles things like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just kind of thinking this off the head, but
Yeah.
there's ways of asking questions that are connected to the frustration or experience of the other person that suddenly just start unpacking. They just start sharing, because it's so rare that we are met with genuine curiosity by someone.
Yeah.
So when we encounter it, it's like medicine. It's like, oh my God. And that's connection. And it's like the first, stage of connection is starting to listen so that we can get a shared reality. And when you've reached a shared reality with somebody, when you feel deeply understood and they feel deeply understood, I don't know if there's a real better experience in the human condition. It's such a relief. There's something fundamentally, I think, that tells us we're not alone. Unlike a unconscious, deep, primal level, suddenly we feel like we feel connected, and it changes everything. So, okay, so I've been talking a while here. So what we just covered was kind of like what we've been working on, the skill set that we've been working on for the past, this is our third session on this. And fundamentally it is how to improve, what is the skill craft in handling or managing relational conflict? Because as you said in a previous call, this was one area where there were breakdowns happening in your marriage, and when you were having these conflicts, the repercussions, the results of it were like they were extended past the conflict. It colored the relationship afterwards. There was like it's like it sucked the life out of it, and things felt harder, and it felt like there was distance. And so then we covered and we talked about the different ways of listening to understand, and then how to ask for your ability to share your understanding, how threat responses get in our way, and how we can notice when those threat responses are up so that we can move into some self-regulation so that we can come back and think thoughtfully and reflect on what's actually being discussed. So this is what we've kind of covered. And I want to check in to see, have you started to notice opportunities, or have you begun to use some of these skills? And what I'm really interested in is not your successes. I am interested in your successes. But what I'm really interested in is where it hasn't stuck or hasn't gotten integrated, or where you're noticing like, yeah, I got some of it, because ultimately I'm wanting to give you these tools, and where they're not there or you're having trouble integrating them, that's where I want to move our focus so that we can support you in getting there.
Well, gosh, I don't know if I have great examples, but the last time that I was distinctly aware of my just utter lack of patience was when we were, this is the day after Christmas, and we're leaving my in-laws' house. And I have a mode that I get in where when I am preparing to leave, like leave the house, get all packed up and go, I'm in a go mode, and
Sure.
I want to leave. And anything that gets in the way of that is just driving me crazy. And so I'm on a real, I'm on a hair trigger at that time where everything kind of annoys me. I'm just like, come on, I thought we were going to go. Let's go. And so that's an instance where I'm definitely embarrassed by how fragile I am. Then, where I'm like, man, I know this happens. I know it about myself. I should be able to prepare something to just be more accepting of what's going on and more go with the flow kind of thing. I don't think that's that closely related to what you were asking, but that's what jumped into my head.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes up in my mind in that scenario is there may be actual value to that force. Like, you're bringing a force to the situation, right? You're bringing a kind of gusto, an execution, directive energy to a place and time that probably needs that to some degree, because transitions are hard, especially when you have kids, little kids. There's like a ton of crap you got to pull together into the bag, and do we have this, do we have that, so there's all these things. And now obviously, and I know this, so this wasn't like, if you were a different guy, I'd probably tell you, well, what do you like when you're ready to go? Is your wife, where's Sumi? Where's Ravi? Where are there things that you could be doing to help her prepare, to pack the go bag, make sure that you've got, diapers or, snacks or, whatever it is that's needed? Do you, are you helping to get out the door faster? Right. And
Yeah.
my guess is the answer to that for you is yes. Like, you're doing those things. So if you're already helping, then what I'm imagining is holding you back is that there's probably some things that either Sumi is still gathering that you really can't help with, and maybe Ravi needs to be sort of corralled. But if you corral him too early, then you got a squirming kid that you got to hold on to while mom is still getting ready. So you don't want to corral him too quick, right? So I think you're tracking things. And I think what's annoying you is the fact that you're annoyed.
Yes.
Yeah. And what I'm offering is, it may be that annoyance is actually appropriate.
Gotcha.
Doesn't mean that you have a license to be abusive.
Right.
Right? You don't have that you don't want to say hurtful things, right? But being agitated and holding an agitated energy after you have already exhausted all avenues of being helpful is actually a little bit kind of like a sheepdog. It's like nipping at the legs of the sheep. Come on, let's go. Let's go.
Yeah.
Right? And like, I think if the roles reversed, if my wife is holding that energy and I'm foffing, right? So foffing is an acronym we use in Burning Man culture. It means fucking around for fucking ever. Right? If I'm foffing and she's like ready to go, it's actually her irritation that gets me going. That I'm like, oh shit, yeah, I got to get my stuff together. We got to go. And so it's actually helpful. And so I don't like, there's a little nuance here. I'm not saying being a jerk, but what I'm also saying is that it may be that aggravation or that irritation is actually in service to creating the transition that's necessary in that time. And it actually, when you leverage it, what I'll say with consideration, it's actually a form of leadership, because you're energizing the transition.
Yeah, it seems like what I need in that moment is really just to realize that it's okay that I want to leave, and it's okay that I use the energy that the stress is giving me to make that happen in a loving way and not in a dickish way.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. What you need, hon? What you need?
Yeah.
And she's like, nothing. Look, no, I got the bags packed. I got everything. What else do you need? What else can I help you with? Nothing. Can you just freaking wait? Okay. All right. I'll wait. How much time do you need? I don't know how much time I'm going to need. Okay. Well, should I start the car? And it's, I think, I don't know, but okay. So let's, I think we kind of beat this one up a little bit. So if I'm understanding you, in the past 2 weeks, you haven't had a relational conflict or breakdown with Sumi.
Oh man, probably not entirely accurate to say it that way, but I'm struggling to come up with one right now.
All right. Well, tell me a part that's been hard. Has there been any? How has the connection with Sumi been these
Yeah,
past couple of weeks? And within that connection, is there something you're wanting more or less of?
yeah. The connection, I would say we were in a lull about a week ago, where it was. We actually had a conversation about it because we were talking about our upcoming new child, and just we were looking at this impending delivery, and she actually mentioned that she was aware that it was going to be different because we're not as connected as we were for our first child's delivery, and she was just kind of noting that. And that hit me. And I don't
Yeah.
remember the exact words that she said, but oh man, I was like, yeah, that's a big deal to take a connection hit at a time like that when she really needs connection to feel like she has the support and love that she needs during an incredibly difficult process. And so I definitely took that, and I took it seriously. And I think literally in that moment, I decided to put more effort in and be more attuned to her needs. And I'd already been, relatively attuned to them, but it was just obvious to me that I needed to make more of a show of being there for her.
Yeah.
More intention and more obvious intention. So
So,
yeah, and so for over
yeah.
the last week, I've been working on that, and it has definitely improved things. We do have more affection towards each other right now, more connection. But
How have you been working on it? You said you've been working on it. What have you been doing different?
well, I mentioned the cleaning book, so
Yeah.
I I've been keeping a pretty damn clean house the last basically the last week.
Okay. That's not small
And
potatoes.
no, I mean like getting up and cleaning for like a couple of hours before she wakes up.
Damn.
Like it
Damn.
is clean. And I've
Damn.
never really done that. I've never had that kind of thing. Well, I'm at the stage now where the floor is really my focus.
Yeah.
Because if the floor is clean, that means other things happen before that point. Like I picked up and it's good. And, I know exactly how much dirt accumulates in one day on my floor now because every day I clean it and it's spotless when I'm done with it. And then the next day I'm like, yep, there's that same, one day's worth of dirt on it. Things like that. The bathroom, absolutely spotless. Like
Okay.
nothing. Not a speck of urine or pubic hair on that toilet. Let me tell you. I even fold I fold the toilet paper for her. So
Oh
first
my
thing in the
God.
morning, she comes in to pee, and it's folded for her. Like she knows that I'm thinking of her.
Oh my God. That's crazy. That's so good.
And then so
Wow.
that's been great. And honestly, I have loved it. I have enjoyed it, and that's why I'm doing it right now. Like that's why I kept on doing it. Like I have been feeling this energy from it,
That's
which
amazing.
is really good. And then the
Okay.
other thing is, I've stepped up my massage game, where I just uh, when we have a break of some sort, like I'm rubbing her shoulders or her feet or a scalp massage, and I mean that's not unusual in our house. I kind of have restless hands in that way. But I'm just making more of an effort of like last night we watched a holiday Christmas movie,
Hmm.
and she got massaged during the movie, and that's it is such a it's such an easy win, honestly. Like
Wow.
I can take her from being mad at me, actively being mad at me, to melting into me with about 30 minutes of massage, you
Wow.
know?
Wow.
And when
Wow.
she wakes up at night, in the night, I'll rub her feet until she goes back to sleep,
Oh my gosh.
that kind of thing. And so it's
Wow.
like, that's what I'm kind of focusing on right now.
Okay. That is, that's impressive.
Thank you.
That's impressive. That's some serious attention and great. Have you know what I'm going to ask? Have you scheduled a date night yet?
No, God damn it.
Hey, it's the holidays.
Ah.
You got holidays are tough, but when I heard her say that she feels like you both are less connected than you were before, the first thing that popped in my mind was date night,
Yeah. Fuck.
right? It's like you can do all the house cleaning, which is really helpful. I'm not swinging a stick at that at all, but the massage, that's working wonders. You can just see how that's an easy win and how effective that is. That like the massage is like very, that's very close to date night energy,
Yeah.
right? Because you're bringing intimate touch, you're bringing connection. And so that's beautiful. And it's like you got a coffee cup that represents how close you're feeling connected. And you're coming in and you're just adding just a little bit, right? And she's sitting there holding this cup, and it's got an inch in there. And in her mind, she remembers the passion and the connection and the closeness and the romance that you guys had, a few years ago. And the cup seemed bigger then.
Yeah.
That's what she's looking at. When you do a date night, that cup, you're filling that cup up a lot. And almost so much like you couldn't get away with, like you fill that cup up in a date night. And if you did none of the cleaning and the massage and any of the other stuff, that cup's going to drain, right? And if you had a date night every week, you could probably kind of keep that cup up pretty well, right?
Yeah.
If you have a date night every 2 weeks or every month, that's going to drain, but you doing those little things help keeps that cup fuller. But the date night provides a focus of attention and romance where you guys get to have, it's not what I call like your routine sex. It's there's gonna be more foreplay. There's gonna be more connection intimately in conversation. There's just the demonstration to her that romance and feeling connected to her is important enough to schedule this time together and plan this time together is filling the cup. But it's really being able to take her on an orgasmic journey sexually on your date night so that, she clocks in her orgasms such that she's looking at your face when she's coming, and then she looks at your face 3 days later, it's the same face. She's gonna feel closer to you. Those moments that you share together passionately, they bleed into the rest of the week.
Yeah,
And
and I'm kind of dealing with the maintenance stuff right now.
Right. You're doing maintenance, and you're doing a bang up job with it too. You're doing great.
But I can't mistake it for the filling.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of guys in long-term relationships, the hurdle to getting to date night is the motivation. They don't feel motivated. It's kind of like they're in a partnership they've been in for a while and they just don't feel that motivation. They don't feel inspired to actually like romance their partner. their partner has gone through that tragic transformation of being once the love of your life into the roommate for life. And they're just kind of like, yeah, I could do that. I could make, hey, but they don't actually close it because they don't actually feel the fire. And that is normal, right? Like Esther Perel, she talks a lot about how do you sustain passion in a long-term relationship. She's got a great book called Mating in Captivity, and another great book that I haven't read, she recently released, but she talks a lot about this conundrum, this challenge, like how do you keep the spark alive? And she's got a lot of great tips. Some of them are more sort of applicable than others. One of them, she says, is create distance. She's like,
Right.
distance creates, distance, what is it? What's the saying, right? Distance makes the heart grow fonder, kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
we when we're separated from our partner for a while, we'll feel those feelings come back. That's one way, but in your situation, that's, not as feasible, right? But another way, and this is, it's harder, if you do, it's kind of like you don't feel it, but you build the date night, you do the plans, you follow through, and then something interesting happens when you're there in the moment and you actually start to take what I would call like some like relational risks. And what I mean by that is you bring a level of authenticity and vulnerability that feels a little edgy, right? Maybe it's you're asking for some sexual desire or fantasy that you have and you want to explore. Hey, would you be into exploring this? Or, hey, you're exploring each other's kinks and desires, or you're exploring maybe, hey, I noticed that we've been feeling kind of distant from each other, and I want you to know that I really love you and I want to feel closer to you. Maybe you're expressing some, relational risk. It's those things that you're kind of afraid to talk about because you don't want to upset the other person. But here's an opportunity to like clear those things. It's like clearing the pipe, the channel between you.
Yeah.
And so that you remember, and then once you start touching and you're into intimacy and now you're in physical intimacy, suddenly you're aroused, she's aroused, you're having a great time, and you completely forgot about the reluctance and the foot dragging that you were experiencing, when you were planning this thing.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Yeah.
Because you're in the moment. But it's difficult to effectively convince or inspire a lot of men to even if you don't feel the inspiration, set up the date night, follow through with it, because when you're in it, it's going to feel good. And it's going to remind you why you're in this relationship to begin with, why you love this person, why are you committed to this person. And then on the other side of that, you got those oxytocin flowing, you got the norepinephrine and all the good, hormones that are coursing through your body that you look at your partner and you're like, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Like she's freaking awesome. I love this person. So I'm going to give you a pass because of the holidays. But before the new year, I want a text with a date on the schedule of when your next date night's going to be. And then on our next phone call, if we're going to talk next week, I want to, before your date night, I want to have a little planning sesh.
Got it.
So that we can make sure that, that you're just going to, like, you don't have to knock her socks off. Just planning a night, making some dinner, and spending a few hours together on the other side, doing a little dancing, putting on some music, you know, having pulling some conversation cards, maybe doing a tarot, divination deck. I don't know if you got to have a tarot deck or anything like that, but sometimes I like to pull cards. A fun game is I like to have the tarot card decks and say, all right, what energy do we want to invite into our lovemaking tonight? And you pull a card. And then that's the card that you're going to use to inspire the kind of lovemaking that you're going to have that night.
Yeah,
Things like that. But there's no easy way to say this, that relationship is, no matter how you slice it, I don't care how great your partner is, over time, that it's gonna, the continuing to maintain intimacy and connection it gets hard because of familiarity, because this person gets to know us, that kind of, it's a normalization that happens over time, and it requires effort to stoke that romance and to keep it going.
I'm curious, just for conversation's sake.
Yeah.
Why do you think it is that hard? And what I mean by that is I generally think that things that are good for us aren't that hard to do. Mm-hmm. And if they are hard, that then there's some other reason that is making it hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm just kind of wondering what your thoughts are if you've spent much time thinking about, relationships, or if you want to say mating, like mm-hmm. what that looked like in prehistoric times, and I get the feeling that the way it was done in Paleolithic times, it probably wasn't as difficult to have the rewarding for having relationships do what they need to do for us.
Well, back then, I mean, you're asking a really complex question, by the way.
Yeah, totally.
And so there's a lot of reasons. One of the things you asked is, what are some of the factors that make relationships hard? And do those factors have to be there? Does it always have to be hard? Right? That's kind of really what you're asking. And you're saying, like, the hardness to some part of there's a part of you that suspects or believes that if something is hard, then it must not be, quote, right.
Basically,
right?
Yes.
Right. And so I think that there's wisdom there, and I think the wisdom is incomplete, because we could also throw the adage, anything worth having is hard, right?
Right.
There's that adage too, which I think is also partially right. It's not wrong, it's just not completely right. So what I mean is, like, there's a lot of factors. I think it's easy to romanticize relationships of the past, bygone days. There was a tremendous amount of toxicity and abuse in old style relationships, right? And relationships can seem to work when there's such a power differential, and the man is basically, woman doesn't have a right to vote, she can't own property, she's completely dependent on the man. Then he's holding all the cards, and of course things are going to be easier for him in that situation, right? But as equality has emerged in the past century, and relational dynamics are continuing to evolve at faster and faster rates, the norms, relational norms, have changed dramatically even within the past 10 years. Right? Like, when I was your age, cleaning a house that put you in like the top, 5%. I mean, that was like, we were being congratulated because we were performing basic adult responsibilities. You
Right.
know, oh, he spends time with the kids. Yeah, how much time compared to you? Oh, he cleans after dinner. He does the dishes. Really? Does he do anything else? You know,
Yeah.
or and you're still doing the laundry, you're still doing all this. Like, there's still not equality. There's not equity at all there. It's just uh, compared to historical norms, he's above the bar. But the bar is so low that it doesn't mean much, right? And so in the past, you know, 10, 20 years, the bar is finally reaching a point where we're being now held to, I won't even say the same, but standards closer to what society has traditionally held women accountable for. And by the way, we're still not being relieved of our traditional responsibilities of being a provider. So it feels
Right.
like we're being asked to do more. Meanwhile, women are still being asked to hold their traditional expectations while also being strongly pressured to provide. They're
Yeah.
going to school, they're now becoming providers, and that's because of divorce and the fact that there's no social security built into our culture now to ensure that women that choose to be a trad wife aren't going to be left when they're 40 and their husband divorces them and exchanges their 40-year-old for two 20s, right? Like,
Right.
so we've got to, you know, so that's just the social norms and angle, right? We
Mm-hmm.
haven't even, like, that's that layer. We haven't now, you know, we go below that and we start looking at generational trauma and toxic conditioning that has happened, right? Like, that's just cultural conditioning of what we're taught to be, what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, successful, right? And then we go below that. Now we got personal trauma. Were they abused as kids? What was their parental role models like? What was relationship role modeling? How was relationship role modeled to them? How did they grow up? And so then when we have a partner, now we're taking in we're trying to find a path to connection through the bias of our own trauma, that of our partner, any societal toxic conditioning, and socioeconomic factors. It's a lot. Now you take all of that under best case scenarios and you find somebody that lights you up and has done their personal work and has, you know, is it feels like a healthy relationship. So we're talking best case scenario here, right? You have overcome tremendous amounts of cultural conditioning to be a man who cleans and cares and loves his wife. And so you're doing your work. You've done a lot of your work. She has done her, you know, some of her work, and you're coming together in your best case scenario, right? Even in that situation, now we're working against biology where just the way our psychology works, we find somebody, we get lit up, infatuation hits for 9 months. We call it new relationship energy. We're completely nuts about this person. And we are literally nuts because the chemicals that are going on in our brain are stronger than any cocaine out there, right? Like, this stuff is like really crazy making. But then and that's our biology. That biology is designed to create infatuation so that we knock each other up. That's why it's 9 months long. It's to optimize towards breeding, reproduction,
Right.
right? But then once we get into relationship with this person, and over time, we start to see that our initial version of who they are doesn't hold anymore. The cracks start to show, their humanity starts to show. We start to see the sides of them that are less attractive. They start to see the sides of us that are less attractive. And we're seeing, you know, forgive the crudeness, but it's like, it's the same old pussy. You know, day in, day out, it's the same old pussy. Right? And
Yeah,
once we've
and
hit
we
that,
probably developed a reliance on variety
yeah,
in that
right.
regard.
Biologically, there's some element in us that wants, you know, there's a hunting dog in all of us that, finds the thrill in the hunt.
Yes, I mean, I distinctly remember the lunacy of my, we'll say, most recent single era,
Right.
where if I had a sure thing in my phone,
Uh-huh.
I'd probably pass to go to the bar to see what else I could find.
What else you could get? Yeah.
What
Right.
else? Yeah, and
Yeah.
and then at the end of the night when it failed, I'd be like, what was I thinking?
Yeah. I
Come
had that
on,
sure thing, man. I
right?
should have just gone with
Exactly.
that.
But it just, weird psychology.
It's weird psychology.
Yeah,
It's weird psychology. It's what our brain is looking for. It for whatever reason. It's there's evolutionary factors that support it, but if it's like a lot of things. Oh, well, we want what we don't have. The grass is greener. It's once you've had the same old, you're looking for something new. You're looking for variety, and all those things are real. And and there's a lot of movement in non-traditional relationships. Openness tries to answer that equation, tries to address that. And in doing so opens up a whole other can of worms and psychological work that has to be done. But I think what I'm getting at is, under the best case scenario, the love of your life, the one is she is your ride or die. You've never been so in love. You fast forward 5 years, it's the same old pussy. Right?
yeah, same problems that you're gonna have to
Same
solve.
old problems. And so
Yeah.
you're going to have to find a way to create, to inspire ever new aspects of freshness into the question is, how do I turn my long-term relationship into an infinite game
Right.
that continues to be inspiring, that continues to enroll me into devotion? Right? That's the question I think you're really asking.
Yeah.
You were asking, well, if it feels hard, then maybe that's a sign it's not right. Even in the best of circumstances, it's still going to feel hard. That does not mean, though, that in some cases, if it feels hard, that's not actually a valid signal that the relationship isn't actually right.
Yes. And,
Right?
and that's a problem with every facet of life. Is it hard because it's supposed to be hard, or is it hard because I'm an idiot and I'm doing something dumb? So
Yeah, somebody
Yeah.
smart said the hardest question we'll ever ask ourselves is when to hold on and when to let go.
yeah.
Right? And I say, the way to answer that question is, I say, is it good enough? Like, fundamentally, is it good enough? Not is it the best? Not can I
Yeah.
hold some fantasy of what I think relationship should be as like a checklist against my current relationship and identify all the places it's lacking and then leverage that as an excuse to sabotage the relationship.
Hey, let me ask you a question. I know you're a very social person. I imagine your social network is quite large. Can you describe to me the couple that you know that has the best relationship? What is it like for them?
Yeah, there are some couples in my life that I really admire. I mean, and I know that within our community, the relationship Kate and I have is widely admired and respected. Like, we are one of those couples in our community that other couples come to for advice, right? And I love that. And I think it's deserved. I think Kate and I have I mean, we have one of the best relationships I've ever experienced. We have the best relationship I've ever experienced, but I mean, in terms of even relationships that I've been aware of, like we have a really
Yeah.
great relationship, but that wasn't your question. And I would say, there are a few that come to mind. And they, they continue, like there is still, romance. There's still a passion for each other there. And these are relationships. I know some that are, more open than I'd say traditional relationships, but there's others that are not, that they are monogamous, and they, continue to, I still feel the level of devotion. And in each case, the men involved are the primary determining factor.
And that's
Not to
interesting.
say
That's
that the women that the women are important, and what they bring to the table is important. In other words, these are powerful, smart, beautiful, empowered, women that deserve respect and devotion. So that's that. But there's a lot of those women, right? Like those women, there are a lot more women that are at that level than there are men that can meet them. And so I see the determining factor in the success is the level of self-awareness and the level of integrity that these men are bringing to their relationship. These women trust these men.
Got it.
Like I can feel their trust. And these men behave in ways that are respectable. They're not sexually leaky. They doesn't mean that like they may playfully flirt, but there's always this understanding of where they're coming from. Is like if they're flirting, it's in a way to be charming, and it's a form of social lubrication more than anything. They're not, they're not. It's not creepy or skeevy where they're trying to set up some side chick somewhere. No, man, their allegiance is clear. They are men who are love and devoted to their partner, and their women trust them. And what I see, the most successful open relationships, regardless of the degree of openness, right? Like whether it's like permission to cuddle with other people or, make out with other people, but that's it, or whatever the level of openness is that they're playing with. The most successful are these couples that I see that have a high degree of trust, that they know their partner's committed to them. And there's not a question there. And when a question does emerge, they have the skills. And this I see with less skillfulness. I do still see these couples struggle in conflict, but it's not like, in other words, I still see room for improvement, but there's enough of a foundation that even when there's conflict and things kind of tighten up and feel hard, they work through it, they get to the other side, and there's reconnection, and they're able to repair. So it's a high level of trust and a good method for repair that I see working best for these couples.
Yeah.
And how do they keep that devotion? How do they keep it going? It's what we're talking about. You have to invest. You have to invest even when you don't feel like it. Even when it feels like, a chore, because it's going to feel like that. But if you do that, I promise you that when you're in the moment and you're actually experiencing the date night or the encounter that you set up, all that chore feeling goes away. the gratitude of your partner emerges in seeing you prioritize the connection, and seeing you putting in the work, and seeing you care, to see your devotion. It softens their heart, they melt, and suddenly the person that had the chore feeling, this kind of hard-edged, brittle woman who seems really distracted or focused on other things in life, suddenly disappears, and in front of you is this ooey gooey, sexy little kitten that is purring and rubbing up against you. And then you're just like, oh yeah, right. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
this is good.
That
This
sounds
is great.
like what is it? Donald Glover, the No More Mr. Nice Guy.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like what he says is helping your partner get into her feminine, like take her out
Right.
of her masculine, put her into her feminine.
That's right. That's right. But, a lot of these books get that wrong. They're like, as if the woman is supposed to always be in her feminine.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. I
And-
think he
and-
says it's like when she gets home from work, where she
Yeah.
has been in her
Yeah.
masculine. That's
There
when
you
you can
go.
help transition her back. Yeah.
There you go. That's beautiful. And I think I think that's wise. Where I see a lot of the literature out there kind of go wrong is, and I think we've talked about this, the sort of the shadow in the feminine that often emerges is entitlement. And the shadow for the masculine is dominance, control. Right? So what does that look like? Well, you'll see, you scroll through TikTok or whatever, and these women where you see entitlement is where they're like, I only want to be in my feminine. I just want to be in my feminine all the time. I want a man that knows how to make me feel like a woman. Right? Yeah. There's wisdom in that, but it's not entirely right. Right? Absolutely. I want you in your feminine. When we're going on a date, like I'm going to be doing the kinds of things like I'm going to choose the restaurant. I might take some input, but I'm going to choose the restaurant. I'm going to be the one asking the date. I'm going to make sure that she knows what time and that I'm on time. And if she's still taking care of herself and getting ready, then I use what I call that is a window of opportunity, right? Anytime I'm waiting on a woman, I take that as a window of opportunity. That is a golden moment. I pull out my Duolingo. I practice my Spanish. I might look something up. I'm going to use that time to entertain, educate, or in some way engage myself so that I'm not sitting there stewing on why my woman's late. Because my woman is late from a place of devotion. So am I going to shit on that? Hell no. That woman is putting in energy for me to look good. So the least I can do is keep my mouth shut and use that time so that I'm not getting frustrated, so that when she's done, I'm like, oh, you ready already? You got a smile on your face? You say, baby, you look amazing. You look gorgeous. You did all that? Right? And now she doesn't feel, she's like, I'm so sorry I'm late. I'm so sorry. Babe, don't you apologize. To look this good, this is a work of art. This takes time. You don't apologize for anything. Right? And then you treat her like a queen. And when you're out, you're watching, right? You're scanning the horizon. You're ensuring her safety. When you're walking on the sidewalk, right? You're closest to traffic. She's on the inside. You're watching dudes who are passing by. You're constant, like your situational awareness is online, and she can feel it. And that whole night, you're sort of like logistically one step ahead, right? So that you're anticipating, so that she, in other words, all she has to do is be in her feminine. And less mature men will look at that and they'll see it as like, oh, dude, she's a fucking pillow princess. Like, that's bullshit. I don't want a woman like that. I'm gonna be working hard all the time and she's just coasting, right? If a woman is in her shadow of entitlement, yeah, I get that. It doesn't feel good when she's got expectations, and when we fall short of those, she is, she's a bitch about it, right? Like, no, that does not feel good. And yes, that would be coming from a place of disempowerment. No, I would not advise a man to fuel that, right? But if she is just giddy and thankful and ebullient in her femininity, is there any other place I want her to be? No. That's exactly where I want her to be. That means I'm doing my job well because I am getting what I want. I'm getting this juicy, sexy, embodied woman who is in the flow of life and her own beauty. Like that's what I want. I want to preserve that. So I'm going to carry that, as if it's something precious. And so I'm doing all the logistics and all the planning so she doesn't have to, because I want her in her feminine. It's not about, I have to make the reservation. I have to do these things. It's like, no, like I am architecting the container that is going to result in the juiciest date possible. Right? It's a different approach.
Totally. And I think, separately, I think it'd be really fun to give your kind of complete overview sometime on your philosophy on dates and just what makes it really click and tick.
I mean, you're already there, but yeah, I think that would be a fun conversation. Especially, there's so many games and so many ways to play, once you're together, right? And it's fun to tease, right? You kind of tease her a little bit, create a little bit of tension is fun. And involving what might seem like spontaneity to her, but it's something that you've already had planned in the back of your mind. Like, where you're going to go walking after you leave the restaurant, but when you exit the restaurant, you're like, hey, should we go for a little walk? I think I could use a little air. And she's like, okay, and you're walking, and then suddenly you come across a merry-go-round in the city square, and coincidentally, and you guys get on the merry-go-round, and then afterwards you walk down a little bit more, and there's a place to, feed the seals or some shit, right? Like, you have already sort of in your mind plotted this out, but in the moment it just kind of looks like it's just flowing. And that's the magician, right? We talked about like the 4 skill sets of masculinity: the warrior, the lover, the magician, and the king. And when you have orchestrated that date and you've got all the bases covered, she's in her feminine, and things are flowing really well, that's your magician in play. And your lover. Your lover's coming out there too. But, and you got your, so yeah. And I think I mentioned, I wanted to send you there's a game that I built called Fate Dates. And it's like 22 different date night ideas that are just kind of, out of the box, right? Like,
cool.
Yeah. And I want to send this to you, and you can choose one, or you can roll a die or some way to randomly choose one. But it's things like, what if, for fun, you blindfolded her and you chose her outfit for the night, and vice versa, right? And maybe you even put a twist where you're going to, agree that you're going to make each other look as ridiculous as possible, and then you got to go out in public and do that and sharing that together, things like that. Or, each date night has a theme, and one might be education, where you're like, okay, we're going to plan our date around, maybe we go to a museum or something that's educational in nature, right? Things like that. But coming back to your question of like, how do you keep the spark alive? I think the 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 piece that I think is important, and it took me a long time to get this, is the piece that the friction that you pointed out, which is, if it feels hard, is it right? Is it good? Shouldn't right feel easy? And the answer is no. It's like right is still going to feel hard at times. And the difference is that in a right relationship, when you do the work, it gets better and you feel closer with your partner and you're growing together. And when the relationship is wrong and you're doing the work and it's not improving and things are getting worse, then either the work you're doing isn't in the right place, or that could be an indication that there's just not compatibility there. And by the way, you could both have done your work. You could both be really great people, really loving people, and still not meet what I would call like the minimum threshold for compatibility. And, you know, it's kind of like, I call it the smell test, right? It's like a great example. And it's like you meet somebody, everything's great, but you don't like the way they smell. It's probably not the right partner for you.
Yeah, I've heard it's a pretty reliable test.
Yeah, it's because there's nothing personal about it. It's just, it is what it is, and that's just one example. There's dozens of ways where incompatibility can emerge, right?
Yeah.
But that's not your situation.
Right.
You guys
I love
have
how she
compatibility.
smells.
Yeah, and you guys are, I would say, well above the norm level of compatibility and potential. And so for you, I say that there's a French word, they call it the ennui. Are you familiar with that word?
Yes. Yeah.
Ennui, right? The ennui of relationship, which is the boredom that results from familiarity over time. That's just part of the game. And in fact, I see it as a feature, not a bug.
Well, it's got to drive a lot of self-improvement.
Right.
At least for me. I mean, that's the way I'm looking at it now.
Right.
I don't want to be the same guy that she fell in love with, however long that was ago, almost 10 years ago now. Like that's
Right.
I got to keep getting better, stepping up my game.
Why? Yes, you're right. But I want to kick the tires here real quick.
Okay.
Like, why is growth important? Why do it? It's hard work. Why not just live?
Well, what that makes me think of is that you grow to meet the need. And so if you didn't grow, you would be stuck in a place that wasn't actually meeting your current needs.
There you go. Great. Excellent question. Excellent answer. Yeah. It's because if you don't, life sucks more.
Right.
And if you do, life sucks less. Life gets better when we do the work.
Yeah.
Honestly, man, it feels almost as if I live in a different reality.
Say more.
The degree of drama and conflict and inner turmoil that I witness in the lives of most people clearly looks to me, it looks clearly avoidable to me when I'm looking at, I'm going into what it is that is really yanking their chain, what's gumming up their their gears, what's in their way, is entirely addressable with a little bit of work. Like there are better ways. There are better ways to treat oneself. There are better ways to treat others that result in a higher level of satisfaction and joy in general.
Yeah.
And so my life is like, yeah, is there challenges, still drama? Sure. But it's almost entirely due to working with other people that are still doing the work, right? Like it's my experience with others that are still they're still working their stuff out, and that's okay, right? In each of those instances, it's an opportunity for me to meet them where they're at, with kindness and consideration, because what almost invariably happens is they have an experience of a different reality. And that becomes an opportunity for them. They start to see, oh, wow, like I'm creating a lot of this stuff. And,
I've been meaning to ask you something. So, you were just saying like you feel, like just in a different realm,
yeah.
in a way, from a lot of people. And it's due to a lot of personal work that you've done. Now, I'm curious, do you notice if and when you travel abroad that you enter into an area where the level of men's, emotional intelligence all of a sudden changes drastically?
Yeah. I mean, that's a cool question.
Because we live a little bit in a bubble in the U.S. I'm just curious if you go somewhere and you're like, oh wow, I kind of forget that people could be normally at a higher level in this regard.
It depends. I mean, I think by and large, a lot of the cultures in the world have a lot of toxicity. I would say in the States, we have the highest percentage of people who have actually done therapy, and which is causing a lot of the cultural tension that we're seeing now, right? Like the whole push from the woke left, I believe, is a result of a tipping point within the population of those who've done therapy. Right? Enough people have done therapy where they're like looking at our norms and going, that's toxic, right? Calling people, guys calling other guys pussies or faggots or whatever, right? Like that's toxic. We have a culture of adolescent men humiliating one another that comes from a bygone culture that was based on some sort of like warrior ethic that weak men need to be weeded out. Right? And so we have the leftovers of that, but we don't have a warrior culture. Our culture isn't about war. It's completely moving away from war. And men are having to reinvent themselves. Well, if for thousands of years I was built to be a warrior, well, what am I now? And there's a huge identity crisis for men going on. And so I think if you go to, another country, you're going to find some qualities that are redeemable and some qualities that are toxic. Like there's a lot of cultures around the world that are really denigrate women, that are just absolutely horrible to women. And one of the things I find really fascinating too is how easy it is to misunderstand other cultures. Like you look at a woman in a burqa, and it's very easy from an American perspective to see persecution. What we don't see is the safety that becomes available to a woman when she covers herself in a society of men that prey on women. right? So that burqa becomes a shield, becomes it's a security device that protects women, right? The sadness is not that she's wearing a burqa. The sadness is the fact that she feels like she has to wear a burqa in order to feel safe. If you go and you look, you see some cultures. One of the ones I really like is in Scandinavian cultures where women historically have always been equal to men. The Vikings, women were equal to men. In most senses, there were a few differences, but for the most part, women were regarded with a great deal of respect. Christianity came in and warped that a little bit, but it's still, the cultural roots are still there. And you look at Iceland, and Iceland has the highest rate of equality in the world between its women and men, and throughout Scandinavia, it's the same. It's similar, and they're much less sexually repressed than we are here in our country, right? So I think that you pick any country and you're going to see good and bad. In the States, we catch a lot of shit from the rest of the world because they look at us and they're like, you guys are whack, right? Your women are whack. Your men have been feminized. You're like, you guys have lost your way. And I think that one of the redeemable qualities about American culture is how fast and we create, integrate, and move through change and transformation. We are constantly moving. We are constantly reinventing ourselves. And yeah, that's going to look messy, and at times it's going to look really icky. But the big picture is what you're looking at is a culture that evolves rapidly. And so we're trying things out, and do I believe there are issues with the American movement to feminize men? Yeah, I think there's issues with it. But I also think that there are larger issues that come with the sort of old status quo, stoic masculinity that is completely separated from their feelings and therefore completely blind to the abuse that they're bringing to their relationships and to themselves. So I think the problem with the feminization is less about there being a problem with a man who in every other way is like a woman, other than the fact he has a penis. I don't actually have a problem with that. But where I see the quote problem with the feminization movement is it ignores, simply because it's right, simply because we agree that a man should be able to behave as a woman, embody feminine traits, embody their own femininity, simply because we say that that's okay, you can't discount it. Discounts, it ignores, generations of conditioning that have gone into what is an attractive man versus an attractive woman. And I think that we ignore that at our own peril because it sets people off, and they look at a feminized man and we say, oh, that's disgusting. And the feminized man is like, what are you talking about? I deserve to be myself. Sure you do. And you're still in reality, and you're still working with generations of conditioning that are still very real.
And biology.
And biology too, right? There's a biological element to it too. So I think, because our women have been conditioned to what an attractive male looks like.
Right.
Right. And so just because I think it's okay that I be feminine in every way, but then I complain because I'm not creating attraction with women and I'm confused. Yeah. I just think that there's a disconnect there. I don't think there's anything wrong with feminizing men. I just think that if you're doing that and you're angry because you're not creating attraction with the women you want,
Yeah, I think the in any scenario, I do often come back to biology, and I use that word loosely, kind of just to mean like a historic and scientific perspective of it, rather than a purely cultural perspective.
We all like to go to the science because it's safe, right? We can stand on it. But the science is inconclusive at best. It's muddy. There's psychology all over the place that's involved, sociology that's all over the place. There's inherited expected norms. So what you're talking about is, what are the biological actual norms? What are the biological factors driving behavior? Right? What is the effects of testosterone on behavior? And I think that's a great place to look, right? But if you over rely on that, you will be left with questions, because the biology either our understanding of the biology is incomplete enough, or what I suspect is that the system itself is too complex to attribute to biological factors. The human brain is too complex. Our neurology is too complex. We're getting inputs from too many places. It's the whole nature versus nurture argument. Yes, we have a nature that drives certain aspects of our behavior, but there's a nurture component to it that is also so big that in many cases it completely overrides the nature. So I think you can't just go on the nature argument. You got to look at the cultural and psychological factors that are driving behavior as well.
Right.
Right. But I think looking at biology as a factor is important. I think it's eye-opening. I think it's really rich when you hear some testimonies from trans men that have taken hormones, testosterone,
Yeah.
and reporting these like overwhelming urges to, violently rape someone, or they're feeling these compulsions, these real strong antisocial compulsions. And there's a lot of counseling that has to go in with testosterone treatment because it activates these antisocial behaviors. Well, that's interesting, And so as men, we grow up being trained and conditioned to handle those levels of testosterone in a hopefully healthy or at least socially acceptable way.
Yeah, and I just have to say, who knows what multitudes of confounding factors there are in a system as complex as a human, and to start twiddling with the dials and expecting to get a logical result, I think is there's a lot of hubris there.
Yeah, for sure. It's
a weird scenario. Like I even like, if you think of a complex system, like I don't know, I'm just going to try to imagine like the Large Hadron Collider, a particle collider, something that takes thousands of PhDs, dozens of years to make. This is like the pinnacle of human achievement. I would never, as a layperson, think that I could possibly go in and start punching keypads and somehow make some sort of meaningful contribution, let alone fundamentally change it. But a human body is orders of magnitude more complex than that.
Right.
And so in fact, we could say it's the most complex thing in the known universe. And so it's wild to me to see people think that making such drastic changes to their body, and I'm not even talking about just like a sex change operation or something. I mean, like anything. It's kind of wild to think that we can so easily control a system so complex.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just
Right.
I like to keep some respect for that
Yeah.
complexity.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good point. And, I still get baffled over how, things that we've been doing for a long time, how really still stupid we are at it. Like
Oh, yeah.
sex, for example. I mean, there's nothing we've been doing as long as having sex.
Yeah.
You know, we've been doing it since the get go. And still the percentage of people, both men and women, who report dissatisfaction in their sex is ridiculous.
Right, right. It'd be
Right?
like reporting dissatisfaction in breathing. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
When did that happen? How did we
Right.
forget how to do this?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like we haven't been doing anything as long as we've been having sex. How is it that we still suck at this? How is
Yeah.
it that this is still, a thing? But we're living in exciting times, and information has never been easier to get a hold of, and we're growing at incredible rates, and it is very understandable for anyone to feel confused around what is it to be a good man, and what do I have to do that. There are so many different messages, so many different things that we're, as just a human, we're being asked to handle, to manage in our lives, right? That across the time scale of humanity is just almost inconceivable, right? We're dealing with complexity that as humans we've never had to deal with before. And so it makes sense to me that there would be confusion and messiness, and that we're all just, because fundamentally, we're all just fumble fucking our way to grace the best way we know how. And I think if anything, we could all certainly stand to have more compassion for one another in our processes. But I think we'll wrap on this one last point that you asked. You said, what are some examples of where my reality seems different, right? Because of the work that I've done. And a real easy example might be like road rage. If I'm driving on the freeway and somebody hauls up on my ass, let's say I'm doing 10 or 15 over in the left lane, and somebody fires up right on me on my ass, right? Some guys will get furious over that, and they'll start an altercation with this person, right? I see that, I get out of the way immediately, and I'm like, go get him, Tiger, right? Like, he's going to clear any speed traps in my path, and it does not concern me that this person is speeding.
Yeah.
Like, that is his business. I don't give a damn. I think doing the work equips us to better understand what are our battles. They say, not my circus, not my monkeys, right? Like, it's a way of just differentiating what is actually ours, what is worthy of my attention, and what isn't. I think some of this also comes with just maturity and getting older. They say the older you get, the fewer fucks you have to give. There's something about, another way of saying that is, the better we get at prioritizing what's important to us and where we want to put our time and energy.
Tuning out the noise.
Tuning out the noise, and in so doing, our life gets simpler and more rewarding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God, what I want to do next time, or some future time, doesn't have to be next time, but I love, you describing that scenario of not having perhaps the same instinctual, confrontational response to a road rage incident. And I love the idea of kind of walking through scenarios and describing what the baseline reality is like for someone that has done a significant amount of personal development work. And just so, so I know like, what is it like? In what ways is life different?
Yeah.
And so I can kind of try it on for size and see like, oh, that is totally different from my baseline, and
Right.
just kind of get an idea of what we all stand to gain.
Well, I'll give you another quick example. Is at like a large event, kind of, electronic music kind of event thing at here in Denver, and there's a guy at the bar that was just, I don't know what started it, but he was just getting really aggro. He was obviously a little intoxicated, and he wasn't a small guy. Like, he was bigger than I am, and so, like, if this guy if he was going to go, if he was going to get physical, like, it could be a problem, right? And this is just one example. I'm just painting one picture. I've used this technique many times, and it's never failed, right? When a guy or a woman in any situation is getting out of hand, I'll approach him and just say, hey, what do you need? How can I help? It was something that I learned when I was working in college, and I was working as a bouncer. It was the quickest way to de-escalate a situation, was to come in and ask the person that's escalating, hey, what do you need? How can I help? It immediately throws them for a loop. They don't know how to respond to that in the moment. They're like, what? What are you saying, man? I'm asking you, what do you need? I don't need anything from you. Okay, no problem. I just wanted to ask. Let me know if you need anything. I'm right here. Now they know that somebody is engaged, that they're making enough of a scene that strangers are asking them what they need. They get self-conscious in the moment, and in most cases they just turn around and walk away. But the altercation ends. And it didn't end because I puffed up and, like, became this warrior that was there to protect the innocent people in the scene. And I'm telling this guy, you're out of control, man. You need to leave right now.
Yeah.
Wasn't that? It was just, hey, man, making human to human contact. What do you need? How can I help? And that's one difference, right? Of where, having done the work, you know what's needed in that moment. You know how to de-escalate a situation. And I'm not taking anything this guy is saying personally. If he tells me to fuck off, that I'm an asshole, I need to mind my own business, no problem, man. I apologize. I was out of line. But I'm right here. You let me know if there's anything you need. So by saying I'm right here, meaning, like, I'm not leaving, I'm not walking away, right? You don't have a pass to be an asshole, but I am here to help and support you. I'm not here to confront, to be confrontational with you. I'm on your side. I'm on your team.
Yeah.
And that, it would be fun to kind of go through some of those scenarios and see how, what is that? How does it change life? But
Right.
It does change life. It changes life on every level, and life gets better and it gets easier. So let's
Cool.
wrap
Let's explore it.
Yeah, let's explore it. And for now, though, we'll wrap on that. You have until New Year's to send me a text. And if you don't, then I want you to send $100 to your auntie charity,
Ah, oh God. Okay.
right?
Okay.
So $100 is going to go to your anti charity, right? So maybe
Yeah.
that's
Some vegan organization, I
vegan
swear.
or the Proud Boys or something that you don't want to send money to, right?
Got it.
Okay. All right, my friend. As always, I really appreciate our time together, and let's get
Thank you
something
so
on the
much.
books for next week. And till then, have a great Happy New Year, and give Simi my best.
Thank you. And you too. Have a great weekend. And I know I haven't actually met her, but tell Kate I said hi.
Okay, I sure will, Dylan. She knows about you.
Okay, cool. All All right, Booster.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Take care, buddy.
See ya.